Right now over President Trump's press conference.
Wait a minute, I'm not finished. I'm not finished, fake news.
The president doubling down, again blaming both sides for the violence in Charlottesville.
You had a lot of bad people in the other group.
And praising some who were there.
But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides.
The president defending some of the protesters who ignited the chaos in Charlottesville.
You will not replace us!
Some of the president's own staff reportedly caught off guard. Top Republicans quickly coming out against the president's comments. From Senator Marco Rubio to House Speaker Paul Ryan, the head of the Republican National Committee right here in Times Square standing by. Our team covering every angle of the fallout this morning.
Live in Times Square, this is GMA with Robin Roberts, George Stephanopoulos, and Michael Strahan.
We do say good morning, America, and it's great to have David here. And once again on this Wednesday morning, the firestorm over President Trump's press conference is growing. More protests erupting at Trump Tower overnight.
And Robin, the comments sparking so much backlash. President Trump saying both sides of the protesters at that Charlottesville rally were to blame for the conflict, and also saying there were, quote, very fine people in both groups.
And also this morning, the movement to take down Confederate statues and monuments across the country is growing, and more of them came down yesterday in Baltimore.
Both Republicans and Democrats this morning calling out the president, saying this is not about sharing blame, that parsing the blame is actually a victory for the white supremacists. The president also now losing the backing of business leaders. 6 executives have now resigned from Trump's Manufacturing Council over his comments about Charlottesville. Our coverage begins with ABC's Mary Bruce, who was there at that press conference at Trump Tower. She's back there this morning for us. Mary, good morning.
Good morning, David. The president wasn't even supposed to take questions, but he surprised even his own staff by launching into an adamant defense of his response to the violence in Charlottesville. Gone was the more measured tone the president took earlier this week. Instead, he was back to his defiant self. It was billed as a statement on infrastructure, but turned into one of the most contentious press conferences of Trump's presidency. The president doubling down, furiously defending his decision to wait 48 hours after the violence in Charlottesville to call out the white supremacists by name.
Why did you wait so long until the last neo-Nazi?
I didn't wait long. I wanted to make sure, unlike most politicians, that what I said was correct. Not make a quick statement. The statement I made on Saturday, the first statement, was a fine statement. But you don't make statements that direct unless you know the fact. It takes a little while to get the facts.
3 days after those hate-fueled protests, the president was back to blaming both sides.
You had some very bad people in that group, but you also had people that were very fine people on both sides.
Defending those gathered to speak out against the removal of a statue of Robert E. Lee.
I've condemned neo-Nazis. I've condemned many different groups, but not all of those people were neo-Nazis, believe me. Not all of those people were white supremacists by any stretch. Those people were also there because they wanted to protest the taking down of a statue, Robert E. Lee. This week it's Robert E. Lee. I noticed that Stonewall Jackson's coming down. I wonder, is it George Washington next week?
And he used a new name to label the counter-protesters.
What about the alt-left that came charging at the, as you say, the alt-right? Do they have any semblance of guilt?
Let
me ask you this. What about the fact they came charging with clubs in their hands, swinging clubs? Do they have any problem? I think they do. Wait a minute. I'm not finished. I'm not finished, fake news. That was a horrible day. I watched those very closely, much more closely than you people watched it. And you have, you had a group on one side that was bad, and you had a group on the other side that was also very violent. And nobody wants to say that.
I asked the president to clarify, is he putting the counter-protesters in the same category as the white supremacists? Mr. President, are you putting what you're calling the alt-left and white supremacists on the same moral plane?
I'm not putting anybody on a moral plane. What I'm saying is this. You had a group on one side and you had a group on the other, and they came at each other with clubs, and it was vicious, and it was horrible, and it was a horrible thing to watch. But there is another side. There was a group on this side, you can call them the left, you've just called them the left, that came violently attacking the other group. So you can say what you want, but that's the way it is.
And this morning, the backlash is growing. 6 members of the president's Manufacturing Council have now announced they're leaving, including 4 of the nation's top CEOs. For them, the cost of doing business with the Trump administration now seeming to outweigh the benefits. But the president is defending these dismissals, dismissing these departures, saying he has many others to take their place. Robin.
All right, Mary. And also this morning, more Republicans are coming out against the president's comments. Our senior White House correspondent, Cecilia Vega, has more on that. Good morning, Cecilia.
Hey, Robin, good morning to you. You know, there is universal outrage over this. The president's own Republican allies in Congress are lashing out at what he said. Take a look at some of these comments. Speaker Paul Ryan tweeting, "We must be clear, white supremacy is repulsive. This bigotry is counter to all this country stands for. There can be no moral ambiguity." And others like John McCain calling the president out by name, saying there's no moral equivalency between racists and Americans, standing up to defy hate and bigotry. The president of the United States should say so. That list goes on and on. One member of Congress basically said, "I don't understand what is so hard about this. Neo-Nazis and white supremacists should not be defended." But Robin, perhaps the most disturbing reaction of all comes from former KKK Grand Wizard David Duke. Immediately after the president finished speaking, he tweeted, "Thank you, President Trump, for your honesty and courage to tell the truth about Charlottesville and condemn the leftist terrorists."
Extremely disturbing there. And it seems, Cecilia, that White House staffers were also caught off guard by the president's remarks yesterday. His chief of staff, General Kelly, a lot of people are making note of that picture of him not far from the president. There he was looking down, Cecilia.
Yeah, Robin, many sources inside the West Wing were completely shocked by this. That photo that you just talked about, Chief of Staff John Kelly off to the side there as the president spoke. I would imagine his look conveys what a lot of people in that room were feeling. The president wasn't even supposed to take questions. Many aides were left scratching their heads this morning. The president completely managed to undo whatever goodwill he had when he called out those neo-Nazis by name earlier, Robin.
That's true. All right, Cecilia, thank you. David?
Robin, thank you. Joining us now, the chairwoman of the Republican National Committee, Ronna Romney McDaniel. Chairwoman McDaniel, thanks for being here this morning.
Thanks for having me.
I wanted to get your reaction to several top Republicans, members of President Trump's own party, your party obviously as well. Senator Rubio saying the organizers of events which inspired the Charlottesville terrorist attack are 100% to blame, saying, Mr. President, the white supremacy groups will see 50% of the blame as a win. Former Governor Jeb Bush, I urge the president to unite the country, not parse the blame. And I want to put this one up on the screen. This is from former Governor Mitt Romney, obviously your uncle, reacting to the president saying there's blame on both sides. He said, no, not the same. One side is racist, bigoted, Nazi. The other opposes racism and bigotry, morally different universes. Do you agree?
Well, the president condemned the white supremacists and the KKK and the neo-Nazis unequivocally.
But it took 48 hours for him to do that.
But he did it, and he should have, and he did. And our party has, across the board, said this is unacceptable. We have no place in our party at all for KKK, anti-Semitism, racism, bigotry. It has no place in the Republican Party. There is no home here. We don't want your vote. We don't support you. We'll speak out against you. The president has said so, the vice president, leaders across our party. This is the beginning of what needs to be a longer conversation. We are seeing this rhetoric ramp up. We are seeing more violence, and we need to take a stand against it.
But you know what I'm asking about here. You heard from your uncle last night saying this is not the same when you parse the blame, saying there's blame on both sides. He said one side is racist, bigoted. These are morally different universes. Do you agree with that?
When it comes to Charlottesville, the blame lays squarely at the KKK and the white supremacists who organized this rally and put together an entire event around hate and bigotry.
So you disagree with the president?
I'm saying the president did the right thing condemning it. I'm saying absolutely the events that transpired in Charlottesville were initiated by this white supremacist KKK rally. It would not have happened if those people had not come together in hate.
So
and there were peaceful protesters who did the right thing, coming out against it.
You had the RNC. So how does the Republican Party defend then what the president said yesterday in pointing out that there were fine people on both sides, that both sides should share the blame here? Well,
First of all, we have to unequivocally say that the KKK and the white supremacists were wrong. I do think people may have showed up in Charlottesville thinking, hey, this is going to be a discussion about whether we remove historic statues. The second they saw Nazi flags, they should have turned tail. The second you join a group that has a Nazi flag or is joining the KKK, there's no good there. There's no good KKK member. There's no nice neo-Nazi. This is not a Republican or Democrat issue. This is un-American what they're doing. And it's going to take bipartisanship to bring people together around unifying this country. And the president has called for that.
As you know, during the campaign, then candidate Donald Trump repeatedly made a promise that he would be able to unite the nation better than Hillary Clinton. He said he was the unifier. I want you to listen to this.
I think the thing that will surprise people, I'll be a unifier. I think I'll bring people together. And that includes blacks and whites and everything. I think people will come together.
Do you think what he said yesterday unified the American people?
I think condemning white supremacy and KKK and neo-Nazism was a first step.
Sharing the blame is what he said yesterday.
I don't think comparing blame works in this situation because we know what initiated the violence and the death of this young woman whose life was taken too soon. But I do think, and I'm going to say this about President Trump, he is a Republican candidate who came to my state of Michigan during the campaign and campaigned in Detroit in the black churches.
And you were there. You were there just this week. But I'm curious, the same people you talked to in Detroit this week, how they would react to the former leader of the KKK, David Duke, coming out, as we reported here, and thanking the president for his honesty and his courage yesterday.
Oh, I think that makes everybody's stomach turn, and I think it makes the president's stomach turn. He has condemned David Duke. David Duke has nothing to do with the Republican Party. He's going to try and get his name into the headlines. That's why we have to condemn him and white supremacy at every level, and it's going to take bipartisanship, leadership coming together to say this is unacceptable. It's not something we want for this country. It's not something I want for my kids. I don't want them seeing this as part of our country's dialogue. So we're going to work together and speak out against it.
But is something going wrong then when you're getting thanked by the former head of the KKK? You had Senator Marco Rubio, who I mentioned. If you begin assigning blame, saying only part of the blame lays with white supremacists who were there in Charlottesville,
I don't think
they're going to feel like this is a victory.
I don't think David Duke is thanking the president for condemning, which he did, white supremacy, neo-Nazism,
but to share the blame, he liked what he heard yesterday.
The president was saying that the violence escalate. People brought violence from both sides, and violence isn't okay. But the blame lays squarely at the KKK, the white supremacists, the neo-Nazis who organized this rally, caused violence, and are perpetrating and pushing hate across this country.
Chairwoman McDaniel, I thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Michael?
All right, thank you, David. Now, Tom Yamas is here with a closer look at those groups who were at the Charlottesville protests. And Tom, we've seen the images, and let's start from the beginning. Who was actually there?
Well, you know, we just heard the president say there were very fine people there on both sides. And, Michael, that's really not the case. This all starts with the alt-right. So who is the alt-right? The alt-right are white nationalists who believe their white identity is under attack. That's what brought them to Charlottesville. They believe the taking down of Confederate monuments is an attack on their core beliefs. It's made up of many groups. It is a big hate-filled tent. The National Front, the Traditionalist Worker Party, the KKK, neo-Nazis. They hate blacks, they hate Jews, immigrants, and pretty much all minorities. But the alt-right is different. They're very media savvy. That's why they were carrying those torches. They know the symbolism, and they don't wear hoods. They feel they no longer have to hide because of President Trump. And their goal, and this is pretty scary to a lot of people, their goal is to carve out a piece of the United States where just white people live, where just white people belong.
And we saw the counter-protesters. The president referred to them as the alt-left. So who are they? Who exactly is the alt-left?
That's not really a phrase the extreme left uses. It's more of a phrase the right uses. But the alt-left, per se, is the Antifa, anti-fascist. They believe the president is a fascist and that the alt-right is his army. They're against racism, fascism, and capitalism. They've told us violence and property destruction is okay when they're battling the alt-right or trying to stop their speakers on college campuses. They believe it's okay to punch a neo-Nazi. And to be honest, you know, we have seen clashes where they are the aggressors all over the country. They wear all black and cover their faces. But this weekend was different, Michael, and that's why the president may have been confused. Not everyone protesting the alt-right in Charlottesville was Antifa. There were regular people there who just hate racism. And the alt-right built up this event. They showed up dressed like they were ready for war. They were the ones chanting the racist messages. And ultimately, it was someone on their side that used his car as a missile and killed that young woman.
All right, Tom, thank you very much. David?
And I forget that a young woman lost
Yes,
her life and 2 state troopers as well. We want to bring in our senior justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas, and Cokie Roberts, both with us here this morning. And Pierre, if I could begin with you, because when you have the former leader of the KKK thanking the president for his honesty, his courage after what he said in that news conference yesterday, this is new and troubling territory.
David, many civil rights leaders and some in law enforcement believe that the leaders of hate are being emboldened. Hate groups are on the rise, up 52% since 2000. The president suggested there was a large contingent of, quote, good people who simply wanted to keep their monument to the Confederate General Robert E. Lee. But as the reporting lays out, those good people were marching alongside KKK members, racists, and Nazis with torches, chanting things like, Jews will not replace us, Jews will not replace us. These people embrace a legacy of hate, bigotry, and genocide, mass murder on a scale of millions. There's always confusion and death associated with these people. And here's a fact that should not get lost. The man that is suspected of running over a woman and killing her with his car allegedly identified with Nazis. So we saw history repeat itself. And while people can cherish their heritage, Lee committed what amounted to treason and was on the wrong side of history, ultimately deciding he would fight against his own country in part to keep a race of people enslaved and treated as property.
And Cokie, let me bring you into the discussion now. The both of us, we grew up in the South. Our families have been close friends for as long as I can remember. What was your reaction to the president's remarks yesterday?
Well, of course, Robin, you and I grew up out of very different histories in the South, but what our families did was try to write a new history and to try to bring together our races and people of different religions, and that's been a long struggle. And it's one that the presidents of the United States have embraced, has been to try to have that kind of unity so that this country could be one. And so seeing the President of the United States step away from that and celebrate, really, people who have been trying to divide us and have been filled with hate is very, very dispiriting and very much out of the ordinary for a president who usually stands as the moral force bringing people together.
Usually in a time of crisis, we look to the president to be the comforter in chief. Now, we know this is far from over. There are more Confederate symbols that are scheduled to come down. There will be more protests. So, Cokie, where do we go from here?
Well, I think that bringing those symbols down and dealing with them in some kind of contextual fashion makes all the sense in the world. You know, I said you and I come from different histories. My male ancestors have on their tombstones CSA, Confederate States of America. And it is emotional, but it's also important to recognize it was treason to support slavery.
All right, Cokie, thanks so much.
Thanks to Cokie and Pierre this morning. And we should note that we did reach out to the White House to bring somebody on the program on GMA this morning. The offer was declined. We're going to switch gears now. We're tracking the hurricane right off the East Coast. Let's turn to Ginger. Hey, Ginger.
Hey there. It is about 400 miles east of the Jersey Shore. So Hurricane Gert now strengthened to 90-mile-per-hour max sustained winds. But I've got to show you these images. That's Asbury Park, New Jersey. And that will be the impact. High surf, rough waves, and rip currents, especially at low tide. That's when rip currents become their worst. So it's not just the Jersey Shore that's going to be affected, but all the way up into Maine, down through Delmarva Peninsula. You can see Maryland there, up through New Jersey, and right through Long Island. Your local weather in 30 seconds. First, though, the rainy cities, brought to you by Sprint.
Hi, I'm Paul. People ask why I switched to Sprint. Well, their network reliability is within 1% of the big guys, and they have the best price for unlimited among national carriers. And wait, are you watching this on the awesome iPhone 7? You gotta get iPhone 7 from Sprint, and they'll give you a second one on them. What are you doing? Go switch to Sprint.
Who's he talking to?
I don't know, but I'd better go to Sprint.
Wait.
2 iPhone 7s! Love you! Get Sprint Unlimited. And now, get iPhone 7 and get a second iPhone 7 on us.
Some dense, widespread fog this morning that will have you slowing down, and make sure you leave extra distance in between you, the car in front of you. 88 high temperature for today. Now it's going to feel much hotter than that with higher humidity. We'll feel like we're into the lower 90s today, tomorrow, as well as upper 90s. Then for Friday will be the most uncomfortable day, and the day in which we could have some very hefty thunderstorms coming through our area. We've got a small chance for Saturday. Right now, Monday looking dry for the solar eclipse.
Coming up, a massive tree crashing down in one of the most famous parks in the world, trapping a mother of 3. How she was able to save her children.
And emergency officials are on high alert for the total solar eclipse next Monday. They're warning you if you're heading into these massive crowds, what you should have prepared. It'll be enjoyable, but just make sure you're prepared. Come on back.
Hey, Mom.
Hey. Hey.
The moment you realize it's time to start sharing the load, literally.
At Lowe's, we have brands like Whirlpool that make doing laundry a chore anyone can handle. The Whirlpool